Okay, so welcome everybody. A few administrative items to start. As I said, we're recording this meeting. Your microphones are turned off to start, and you'll have to unmute to speak. So we will have you all asked to unmute once we get to the interactive portion of the meeting. We've left at least half an hour for discussion at the end. You can, throughout the meeting, use nonverbal feedback options. You can raise your hand. You can use the emojis that are available to you through Zoom. We love to see sort of how you're feeling about what we're speaking about. We've also left the chat open as well, but if you could please hold your questions for the end, we will get to them. So welcome again, everybody. Now that we have that out of the way, we'll go ahead and get into the content of the meeting. So before we get started, if you missed our first meeting, which was held on October 25th, you can find a recording of that meeting and other project materials for the Blue Hill Avenue Transportation Action Plan at boston.gov/Blue Hill Avenue. And that includes the history portion that Alensa from Powerful Pathways presented at our last meeting. We are also going to upload that separately to the website for those who are interested. It was really helpful to kind of set the stage for Blue Hill Avenue as it is today, and then looking towards the future. So again, what are the project goals? Our first goal and the number one goal for the city of Boston is to improve pedestrian safety along Blue Hill Avenue. If the street is not safe for people who are walking or rolling, then it really fundamentally is not safe for anybody. So the city of Boston has said, moving forward with this project, at its core, it has to improve pedestrian safety. Goal number two is that we want to expand transportation options and reliability. The way that the street is now, it makes it difficult to travel almost by any mode, but especially if you bike, ride the bus, or walk. And so we want to look at options to really expand the range of ways that people can get around, and also the reliability of all the different types of travel modes on Blue Hill Avenue. And then the final goal, which we've rephrased since last time, thanks to some feedback from the audience, is to connect infrastructure investments to the work of other city departments and state agencies. We know that transportation does not exist separate from other parts of the city. In fact, transportation is a huge connector for people. And so we will be working with our fellow colleagues to look at housing and development, business and economic development, environmental resilience, and public realm improvements that can also be pursued as part of this project. So what are the goals for today's meeting? We've got a few of them. And so we have, first, our goal is to orient residents to where this project came from and why the community engagement process that we're doing for Blue Hill Avenue's Transportation Action Plan is different. Our second goal is to provide you all with information about who's involved, who's the team helping to lead this project. The third goal is to provide opportunities for you all to engage with the process and the project as it develops further, which are of course intimately connected, both inform each other, the project and the process, and we really want to go about this in a way that promotes equity and justice. The fourth goal is for all of us together to be able to collectively discuss questions and ideas that reflect the diverse perspectives of residents in Boston and especially along Blue Hill Avenue. Next slide, please.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Chevelle Pacheco with Consult Leela. I think this is right in line with what just happened. We do have some ground rules that we like to set when we're holding any space, but especially, in this space being virtual, where we're not able to see and really get to know each other. So the first is, most importantly, to maintain respect for others in this space, for the consultants, for the community members, and the municipal agencies. We're also asking that you respect each other in your comments and questions and in the chat as well. And I did make it so that you can not unmute yourself. You have to have your hand raised so that one of our hosts can unmute you when it comes time to speak. Another of our ground rules is to use I statements. Everyone here is coming from a different background, from a different way of traveling along Blue Hill Ave. So we're asking that when you speak, you're speaking for yourself and just saying I as opposed to we. Just because there are many different people who use Blue Hill Avenue and not everyone is present in this space, and we're aware of that. Our third ground rule is to step up and step back. This is something we use with the youth that we work with. Please step up if you have something to say. If you don't feel comfortable saying it in the larger audience, if you can private chat one of us, your thoughts and opinions. But also, if you are someone who is speaking a lot, we ask that you please take a step back to allow other folks to step up and share what they're thinking, how they experience Blue Hill Ave, and what their thoughts are. And lastly, we just want to say there will be a good amount of time for reaction and discussion at the end. So please try to limit your questions until then. Sometimes the chat can be a little bit distracting. So if you have a way to just keep track of what you want to ask or what you'd like to say, we are going to have time at the end to get to those. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to sort of welcome you again and thank you for being here. The first thing we want to do tonight is something that we actually didn't leave enough time to adequately do on our last meeting 3 weeks ago, which was actually to introduce the team. We also want to give a little bit of a summary of where we've been and where we are now. There was quite a detailed presentation given by Alenza last time, which you can find online on the website. But we want to just give, for folks who are new tonight, just a very small snapshot, and we don't want to make everyone go through that listening to that again if you were here last time. Then we're going to recap some of the feedback and questions from the last meeting. So if you attended that meeting, hopefully some of those things are familiar. And if you didn't attend it, you can get a sense of what we discussed 3 weeks ago. And we do have some answers already for you to some of those questions that you brought to the table. And then that will be followed by a discussion. And the discussion, as well as some of the other parts, will include polls. Which allow you to answer questions that we'll be asking everyone to answer. Last time we did this, we had everyone answer in the chat. What we found was not everyone was answering, and we don't know if whether people were maybe a bit distracted or they were just reading what other people were writing in the chat. Or perhaps they had an opinion that they felt might be unpopular. So what we've done this time for the polls is we've made them so that everyone will enter your answer in your own window, and we'll collect all of those answers, and we will discuss some of the highlights during this meeting, and then make all of those answers public before the next meeting. Next slide. So let's meet the team. Next slide. One of the things that was talked about last time and will be touched upon again tonight is the fact that this is a project which really touches every aspect of community life, and therefore it touches many different departments and agencies in the city and state. And so while this is a transportation department, Boston Transportation Department project, where it officially sits, our team and the Department of Transportation have made a point that we are including and conferring with and discussing all of the ideas at every step of the way with liaisons with all of the city departments that you see on the left: Office of Housing, Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, BPDA, Office of Neighborhood Services, and so on. And that we are also coordinating with state agencies, so MBTA and Mass DOT. And the reason for that is, that we know that the work that is done in cities, particularly large infrastructural projects and investments, whatever they are, have impacts outside of that project itself. And we want to make sure that we are taking into consideration all of the possible impacts and all of the considerations that need to be brought to bear during this process. Next slide. So I'm going to ask one person from each of the folks in the circle and the team to introduce yourself and your team, just so that you can kind of get a sense of the names and faces that will be showing up every month and leading this process. So the engagement consultants, I'm Stephen Gray with Grayscale Collaborative. I am working with Ann Lynn and Caroline Smith, who are my project manager and project planner and project urban designer. Alenza.
Thanks, Stephen. Evening, everyone. My name is Alenza Michelle, and I'm with Powerful Pathways. We are a creative planning and design agency supporting community engagement, and I'll pass it to Consult Leela.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shavella Lee Pacheco, co-founder of Consult Leela, and we are focused on bringing young people under the age of 18 into the planning process. And I'll pass it to Jeff, Tool Design.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Rosenblum. I work for a transportation consulting firm called Tool Design Group. We're a mission-based firm that's focused on transportation in the Boston area and other places. And I've been working on transportation in the Boston area for the last couple of decades. And our role is to support the team as community consultants and to help be able to answer the types of questions that come up at these meetings and other community meetings to sort of provide that kind of support. So thanks.
And then we also have been working closely with Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition and Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council. Chevelle and Fatima, do you want to introduce yourselves as well?
Sure, I can go first. So my name is Chevelle Olivier. I am the executive director of Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition, but also a Mattapan resident.
Hi, I'm Fatima Ali Salam. I'm chair for the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council, and I'm also a Mattapan resident.
And the community partners that we've been working with so far is a small list and a list that is to be expanded. What you see below the circle where it says stakeholder workshop, these are organizations which I'll read off, which we have been in contact with, and we have workshopped with, and we have listened to feedback from, and who hopefully will be a sort of sounding board and meeting with us every couple of months. Some of those groups and some of the individuals on those groups may decide that they would like to join the sort of core team, and that's something which we will be discussing with them soon after this meeting and before the next meeting. So this list is not a list of endorsers for this project. I want to be very clear, and neither are Mattapan Food and Fitness or Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council. This is a list of trusted neighborhood partners that we have been reaching out to get guidance on how best to steer this engagement process. So Garrison Trotter Neighborhood Association, Greater Grove Hall Main Streets, Project Right, Franklin Park Coalition, Mattapan Teen Center, Morningstar Baptist Church, Mattapan Main Streets, Prince Hall Grand Lodge, Mattapan Community Health Center, and Franklin Park Zoo. This is a list that we hope will continue to expand, and we also hope that many folks that are on the list in the gray box will not only continue to meet with us on a semi-regular basis, but that some of them will meet with us more regularly and really help steer this process in the right direction. Next slide. So I will now hand it off to my colleagues Jeff and Alenza to run the first poll.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. So we're going to have a combination of some direct input through a polling system that is built into Zoom. We decided that instead of trying to use some other system, sometimes you've seen at other meetings, we're going to use the one that's built into Zoom. So that if you're on your phone or on one device, you don't have to sort of type in a code and go to another device. So we're going to put up a poll and answer these 3 questions to get a sense of who's here, who's in the room with us, and then we're going to be able to, looks the poll is up, great. And then we're going to have some go to other elements of the presentation that Stephen laid out. And then we are going to have a discussion session where we're going to do a similar thing where we're going to have more open-ended questions for people to answer more freely Those will be anonymous, and what we're going to do is immediately after the poll closes, take them, do a quick synthesis, and show them to everybody so people can get a sense of what your other colleagues and other people in the room are thinking. So if anybody does have any trouble with the poll, you can, I think I've put it in the chat and we can record it that way.
We'll take about 10 more seconds, so please get your responses in.
So it looks like about more than half, almost 3/4 of everybody. So I appreciate it. All right, looks like 3/4 of everybody responded, which is fantastic. Thanks. And again, if you want to put in the chat, you can do that and we'll record as well. There'll also be another opportunity for people to type in like long form responses to just your thoughts in general later. So we can close. Kirsty, do you want to click on the share results? I guess either of us can. All right, so everybody should see on the screen the results of the poll. Just to give a sense, now we asked, what is your primary way of traveling along Blue Hill Avenue? And we asked it kind of in a way that we know that lots of people might drive and walk or bike and drive. So sometimes take the bus and sometimes drive. So we recognize that people use multiple modes to get around. And just looking at folks that are here with us tonight, lots of people are primary drivers. There are some cyclists here, people that walk. I know there are probably people here that don't have a driver's license yet and want to honor that they have to get around by train, bus, foot, and bike, or get a ride from somebody. So with that, we can move on to the next section.
And I would just say there were a lot of people in the chat saying that they didn't see the second question. You can just write that into the chat, the reason why you use that mobility.
Oh yeah, so that's a good point. So when we get to the next, if people don't see things, you can scroll down to get the other questions, especially if you're on a small device like a phone.
All right. For the purpose of moving forward, I'm getting a notice about keeping on time, so we're gonna do our best to do that. So what have we been doing and where are we now? Let's go to the next slide. So there's been a lot that's been happening over the course of the past few years. A myriad of different corridor projects, specific improvements to sites, in and around Blue Hill Avenue and across the neighborhoods. This is a list of what's currently in the works. And as you can see, there's a combination of planning processes, redesign projects, some arts and cultural projects like community murals, and a combination of city and state-related projects. We also wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about how we're doing this work differently. As we have heard, as many of you have said, and this is certainly an important part of my organization's practice, we like to look at things holistically, and the city is definitely taking that attention to this process. So we're not just looking at Blue Hill Ave from the perspective of transportation, but we're also looking at it in terms of what's happening in the public sphere, housing and development, and business and employment opportunities, and how different projects end up impacting another. And it's very important to move forward doing this holistic approach because, as we've talked about in previous meetings, you can't just talk about transportation without talking about or thinking about housing, or thinking about environment, or thinking about economic opportunity, thinking about public space. So all of these are representative in this process, and that's why we have a collective of both locally minded as well as national partners that are involved in the community engagement process, and why we're working so closely with groups, because we want to make sure that we are keeping all of these issues at the forefront. Next slide, please. Okay, let's go back one. Thank you. So in terms of where we've been, the Blue Hill Avenue project is not a new project. It's a project that's been underway since 2019. This is a running list, and if you want to take a screenshot or take a look later, this list of activities will be available on the City of Boston website. But there's been a number of different types of meetings that have happened, pop-up events where city staff have attended different events and held coffee hours to talk to members of the public. We've done a series of neighborhood walks over the course of this past year. And there's also been a series of different types of public education workshops and opportunities to collect public feedback. And the expectation is that we will have many more. We'll be adding many more things to this running list of activities. Next slide, please. So where are we now? Well, there's a lot that we're trying to make happen, and we need the support and the participation of the public in order to reach as many stakeholders as possible. So as we said, we've been doing both formal and informal conversations and events. We've been talking to different people of different interest groups and different experiences, like residents of public housing, seniors, families with young children, youth and students, businesses and business patrons, faith-based groups, health centers, developers and business owners, and people who bike, ride, and take the public transit. And I would also even include folks who walk as well. To us, when we say what success looks like, is that we're centering quality of life, health and safety, such as addressing heat islands, air quality, pedestrian safety, green space. We also want to make sure that this project is going to create accessibility for businesses and other services and cultural centers as we try to think about holistically around these improvements in the neighborhoods. How do we make sure that Blue Hill Avenue helps connect people better to those improvements and those opportunities? And one size doesn't fit all. This is not a monolith. Some things that, you know, as a motorist, you may be really interested in may not be applicable for people who bike or people who walk or persons with disabilities, right? So we need to be mindful that this is not a one size fits all. And one of the things that we're exploring among the myriad of many questions that we're trying to sort through with you, and I say with you because this really has to be a partnership with the public, is how can we tailor change to the needs of particular locales? Because certain intersections look different and affect different things. And in between those intersections, we're also looking at different things. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it to Kirsty now.
Yes, hi again, everybody. So now we're going to talk a little bit, recap the meeting that we had in October, just give you some brief statistics about who was there and what we heard, and then also try and respond to some of the questions that came up during that meeting. And so myself and some other members from the City of Boston team will be responding to these. Next slide. So who was there and what did we hear? We had 144 people attend our meeting on October 25th, which we were really excited about. And we heard from 60 people, either through the chat or people speaking up during the discussion time and voicing their opinions. To put that in context, though, we did see that about a dozen people were responsible for the majority of the discussion that happened in the meeting. So we got some great feedback and some great information, but we're looking to hear from other folks even more and make sure that everybody who attends one of these meetings has the opportunity to contribute if they'd like to. So we ran the same poll that you saw at the beginning of the last meeting, except last time we let people choose more than one option. This time we limited it to a single option to see how the results might be different. So you can see this doesn't sum to 100. That's because we let people select all that apply. But the most common response was driving, followed at a kind of distant, more than 20% less bus and train, and then walking, biking, and other. And we got some great feedback from folks on what they would like to see along Blue Hill Avenue if the Transportation Action Plan moves forward. And the changes that came up most often from folks were more lighting. So both in terms of for people driving, but also for people walking and biking. New sidewalks, we heard that the condition of sidewalks along Blue Hill Avenue is in need of repair. And so repairing and replacing those. More crosswalks. So a few folks mentioned jaywalking or not being able to get where they wanted to go, having to walk a ways in order to cross safely. We also heard a lot of asks for more trees, bushes, plants, just green, what we like to call it the city green infrastructure. Better bus stops. People mentioned some specific things as well, like more seating, better lighting at the bus stops themselves, some more real-time information. So information on when the bus is actually going to show up. Is it in 5 minutes? Is it in 10 minutes? And then another big thing too is supporting small businesses. Blue Hill Avenue has an abundance of small businesses, which we love, and we want to make sure that those folks are supported throughout this process. Next slide, and I will hand it off to my, bus ridership. So we also got some questions about, why would you propose something like a center running bus lane here on Blue Hill Avenue? And that's because Blue Hill Avenue is one of the busiest corridors for buses and bus riders in the entire city of Boston. So our data show that more than half of people who are on Blue Hill Avenue during rush hour are actually on buses and not in cars. So over half of the people are stuck on these buses, but just like everybody else are getting stuck in traffic. Route 28 is one of the highest ridership buses. You can see it's one of many on Blue Hill Avenue. And unfortunately, we see that Black bus riders spent on average 64 more hours per year on MBTA buses compared to fellow white passengers. And if we are able to improve bus speeds on Blue Hill Avenue, it could go a long way to addressing that inequity. And now I will pass it off to my colleague, Charlotte Fleetwood, for the next slide.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Fleetwood. I'm a planner with the Boston Transportation Department. And one of the things I do is facilitate the Vision Zero task force. So we're really focused on crashes, reducing crashes, and our goal is to eliminate fatalities in the city. So what we use for our crash map, we have information that actually comes from our 911 system, but through EMS. So every time EMS is called to respond to a traffic crash, it gets included on our Vision Zero crash map. So what you're seeing on the right here is just a screenshot of the map. And this is fully, it's available, open to the public. Each one of these dots represents one of those crashes, and there's different colors for each mode. So you can see along Blue Hill Avenue, there's quite a few blue dots, a few red dots for pedestrian crashes. Blue Hill Avenue is one of the high crash areas for motor vehicle crashes. So it just means that the density or the number of crashes within each half-mile segment is higher than in a lot of other parts of the city. In 2022, a crash happened on average every 3 days. So this map, as I said, is available online. There's the information for it. I can put it in the chat as well. But if you're interested or have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to discuss it in more detail.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kwame Kufor. I am a member of the transit team working with Kirsty at the Boston Transportation Department. See, the next question that we got at our last meeting was, did the Columbus Ave project actually do anything to improve sidewalks or crosswalks? And in short, the answer is it did actually. The changes that were made were focused on pedestrians or anyone walking, rolling, or strolling down Columbus Ave. 45 curb ramps were reconstructed on Columbus Ave, and taking into account the accessibility and convenience, we made it easier to cross general traffic by shortening crosswalks and also making crosswalks more straight. See, here, this is a crosswalk at Academy Road, and it used to be 45 feet across, and you used to have to walk into the street. You'd have to go on street level, and now the condition is a 30-foot crosswalk with, and the crosswalk is raised, so you no longer have to walk down into the streets. Next slide, please. See, the next, sorry. This slide is at Gray Streets. We added a new crosswalk that allows pedestrians to walk less, these pedestrians have to walk, less through general traffic and walk across 2 lanes of traffic that are now traveled by, bus operators who are trained and, professionals in driving. So there's less of a chance of dangerous crossings happening. Yeah, thank you. All right. This is a crosswalk that was added in front of the Doris Bunce Apartments. Formerly, it used to be 60 feet across with a very small pedestrian refuge in the middle. And now it is 33 feet to reach the southbound bus stop from the bus refuge or the rider refuge in the middle. And it is 40 feet round trip. So it is now shorter to get to the bus stop where you needed to.
So another question we got was about Columbus Avenue's impact on traffic and speeding. So there have been some comments about things feel slower on Columbus Avenue compared to when I drove there before. And part of that is actually intentional. So when we looked at the data before the project was implemented, people were driving up to 45 miles per hour on Columbus Avenue. And now after the project is there, you can only go as fast as the slowest car, which can be frustrating, but it means that people are driving at a much safer speed, down to 35 miles per hour being the maximum speed that people are driving. And that has really important implications. So you can see from this graph that before, if a pedestrian, for example, someone crossing the street, was hit at a car driving 45 miles per hour, they were more than likely to die from that hit, from that crash. Now that people are only going up to 35 miles per hour, people are more than likely to survive if they are hit by a car going that speed. Of course, these are still above the speed limit of 25 miles per hour, which you can also see here as a reference. Next slide, please. So what do bus riders think? In early December, after the bus lanes were implemented, we hired some folks to go out and hand out $5 Charlie cards and talk to folks about, what do you think? How is this working? And we got some really interesting feedback. So 82% of folks said they felt safer than they did before. 78% were satisfied with the new bus lanes. 74% said that their trips felt faster. We see that in the data too. So folks are saving between 3 and 4.5 minutes per trip And that's really important because the bus lanes are less than a mile. So that's a really effective time savings for such a short segment of street. We also saw that 74% of riders said that their trips are more consistent, so they can actually count on the bus coming on time. And really interestingly too, some riders said, I'm taking the bus more often. And not only am I taking the bus more often, I'm replacing car trips that I would have taken otherwise with bus trips. And what that means is that we have more space on our roads for the people who really need to drive. There are folks who do currently and will always need to drive. People with lots of small children, people with mobility needs, people who need to access medical care or health care. And so importantly, we're trying to shift people to other modes so that we can have space on our roadways for the people who need to drive, and also for the impact that that can have on bettering our air quality and our emissions. And next slide, please. So what have we learned? The project was not perfect. This was our first time implementing a center running bus lane project in partnership with the MBTA, and we've learned a lot. So one of the major points of feedback we got was that there's concern from residents that they're afraid they're seeing more speeding and more cars on neighborhood side streets. And unfortunately, we didn't capture the data to look at that ahead of time. That is something that we've learned as well. So we'll be making sure to collect that data for the Blue Hill Ave project. But moving forward, we're partnering with some local folks to make sure that we go out there. We're going to get traffic counts and speed counts, and then work to see, what can we do in order to address those speeds and those safety concerns. In terms of the urban design, we've also heard from people that they'd like it to maybe feel a little bit more like it's part of Eggleston Square specifically, or really tie some of the infrastructure to that neighborhood in terms of the look and feel. So that's something we'll be focusing on in this project too. When it comes to bus shelters and the other design that goes here, we also will make sure to include as much green infrastructure as possible. Where can we plant trees? Where can we put in rain gardens? Where can we increase the greenery along the corridor? And then two final items. One is that we've seen that the pickup and drop off and delivery spaces aren't working exactly like we thought they might after the bus lanes are in place. So we will make sure we partner with businesses and institutions to formalize spaces for those quick things in order to help prevent double parking or blocking the traffic lane. And then also we want to make sure we're hearing from our bus operators and other MBTA staff to help inform design. They had some comments on how the traffic lights work and such. We'll make sure that all of those learnings come into this project. And next slide. I'm going to pass it back to Jeff and Alenza for the feedback portion of the meeting.
Great. Thanks, Kirsty. So what we want to do now, we presented some material. We want to get some feedback. We have two questions that we want to ask. So we want to try to pace ourselves. And the way it'll work is, if you want to move to the next slide, we're going to put up an totally open-ended poll. And the reason for this is so that everybody can provide some written feedback right now as you're thinking and reflecting on what we just presented. And then I'm going to quickly synthesize it and put it up on a slide so we can get a sense of what everybody's thinking. And now all of that will be anonymous. If for some reason you can't get the poll to work, you can put your comment in a chat. And if you don't feel like you want to do that, you can email us afterwards to let us know what you think. So however you want to compose your thoughts, we want to hear it. So do you want to open the poll, Kirsty? All right, so this should be an open-ended box for people to enter your thoughts, and we'll just give people some quiet time to do that.
Okay, we're about to wrap this up. All right. Gonna share the results.
So the results, and apologies, it was me that was unmuted and my phone was buzzing and I was ignoring it. So the results aren't going to show on the screen. I'm going to need to cut and paste them. So while I do that, Alenza was going to take some questions. So if people want to raise their hand, we'll form a queue. Alenza can call on people and make your comments. A reminder, if you put in the comment that you're going to say verbally written, then we're going to show that on the screen in a couple minutes. So if there are thoughts you want to share beyond that, now's a good time.
I also want to take this time to acknowledge the folks representing elected officials and elected officials themselves that are here. We've got Representative Holmes. We have Jordan from Councilor Royal's office. I believe we have Chris Westfall from Representative Fluker Oakley's office. We also have someone from Representative Miranda's office. And I think this is actually a good time to open the floor. I understand Rep. Holmes has something he'd like to share. So Rep, if you'd like to make a comment.
Good evening, everyone. I want to just, I'll come off of my camera here. I don't know if you can see me or not. But thanks everyone for what you're doing tonight. I really appreciated the process where you're addressing the issues out from the beginning. So my quick comments are, I really feel that Blue Hill Avenue today is really designed for the car. It is not designed for the public rider. And so one of the things I saw in the comments, particularly Javon said last time, that he wanted to make sure we had the data. And I appreciate you guys coming back with the data. But I think the other layer of that was they were asking, where is that data from? In particular, what are we asking now with what's happening after COVID? What's happening with the things with the ride being free? I'm sure the ridership has even gone up even more. And so it would be good to get more recent data. And not only that, but data for where people are actually getting on and off the buses. What is that load? The things I heard from last month also was simply, what are we going to do about parking? And I've seen that several times. And I just want to just reiterate that with the challenge of what's happening over at Eccleston, we've heard that loud and clear. But then the parking, if you were to go to center lane, the parking actually goes back to the businesses. We're taking 3 or 4 parking spots at each one of the bus stops now. So I'm here to just make sure I'm continuing to listen and support the effort and really prioritize our neighborhoods, not prioritize really what I see now with Blue Avenue really being just a gateway into the city for those coming up from the south. And when I stand out, I live at the corner of Blue and Goodale. When I go out each morning, all I see, mostly what I see, are single-use cars. All of us get in a car with only one in the car, and that's really what I see most. And those are the folks who, in today's configuration, are most being taken care of. And so I'm hoping that we continue to center our people. I just think back to when we went to go knock down the bridge near Forest Hills. We went into that conversation saying, hey, we should have a shorter bridge because you don't have the overpass going under it. You know that you don't need to go over both of the roadways anymore. And we went in there with our own preconceived ideas. But when you went and really drove down to the data ended up having us come back with no bridge at all. And so as we go through this process, I just ask that folks hold their powder. Don't come into these conversations where I keep seeing folks that's already loaded and ready to gun and say, yes, I don't want it. Yes, I do want the busway. I'm asking that we at least wait and hear all of the opinions and perspectives, because I'm sure once we get into these conversations and we land on I do, I don't, it's going to be hard for us to go back. So please continue to do exactly. Alencia, I thought was great. You guys started tonight with, hey, this is what you heard last time, and this is what some of the answers are. That's a very good way about going about how to do it. So thanks for giving me a moment to say a few words, and just know I'll continue to be in it to the end, because this busway or no busway or Blue Avenue, however you want to put it, is highest priority to me because of the fact that we need to do something about Blue Avenue. Thanks, folks, and I'll still be here through the call. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative. I'd like to also invite if any other elected officials would like to make a comment, feel free to raise your hand. Okay. Any representatives of elected officials would like to comment? Thanks for confirming that you're listening in, Jordan. Okay, great. All right. Jeff, are we ready to share the results? You're muted. Hang on.
Not yet. If we want to take 1 or 2 more questions, then I'll be ready. Okay,
great. So we're seeing a lot of discussions in the chat. And if there are specific questions that folks would like to raise right now that they would want the team to take note of, let's open it up for that. So please use the raise hand feature and you'll be called upon. Thanks for the acknowledgement, Angela, representing Councilor Royal's office. Hey, would anyone like to raise any questions? Okay, we've got a hand up for Cassina Gray. Please state your question. I'm gonna unmute you.
Hi, thank you for unmuting and thank you for giving me an opportunity to ask my question. I'm just wondering, maybe this was already shared at the beginning. How is this information being given out to people that live in the community, whether they drive or take the bus? I know that there was a poll in here that I missed, like how is this data being gathered so that way you're getting information from everyone that uses Blue Hill Ave and not just the biking population or the walking population or the driving population. It's important that the community has a say.
Thanks for that question. That's a great question. I invite my team members to also join in responding to this. And if we can go back to some of the earlier slides, not sure if you had seen this initial part, but we do record these meetings and it'll be posted on the city website. So if we can scroll back to the where have we been slide. So we talked earlier in this meeting about the various activities that have taken place. So as you can see, there's been meetings that have been a part of this process since 2019. We've also done a series of pop-ups. We've done a series of neighborhood walks as well, and as well as workshops. In addition, we've also been meeting with community groups to initiate the process for getting the word out. We also had sent out a mailing that covered anyone within a mile radius of Blue Hill Avenue that should have gotten to most households. We know it doesn't always reach everyone, but there was a mailing that was sent out. And if we can go to the next slide, there are a number of future activities that we have been planning, from doing focus groups, more pop-up events, targeted discussions that we've had with like residents of different types, including business owners and business patrons. And we're looking to continue to do this over the course of several months. So if anyone wants to add in response to that.
Yeah, I'll just add to that last bit you said, over the course of several months. This is the second since the restart of this process this year. This is the second community meeting that we've had. We're skipping December because of the holidays, but starting in January until July at least, there will be a monthly meeting on the fourth Tuesday of every month from 6:30 to 8. So that's something we will be continuously communicating out, but that's something that you can also rely upon as the date and time when this meeting will occur on a regular basis.
Thank you for your question. We have Renita Hargrove. I'm gonna unmute you.
Yeah, so my question is, I hope that they don't put trees, but if they were to put trees, who is going to be responsible for their maintenance? Because they put trees on Quincy Street where I live, and they haven't been taking care of them. There's weeds, it looks terrible. Trash is all inside the weeds. It's really not good.
Thanks for your question, Renita. I'm gonna invite Kirsty or Kwame or Charlotte from the city to respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Renita, that's such a good question, and admittedly something that, as you've seen, the city has not always done the best job of maintaining the trees that we put in the ground. So excitingly, the city actually just hired someone in the Transportation Department and Public Works Department, which are overall called the Streets Cabinet. And she is in charge of green infrastructure. And so what that means is anywhere that in coordination with like a street project or a road project, we place trees, shrubs, bushes, grasses in the public right of way. And really importantly, a huge part of her work is working on maintenance agreements in order to make sure that those spaces are maintained. So not only that the trees are watered, but like you said, that the tree pits are kept clean, that they're in good health and that sort of thing. So we don't have all the answers right now, but we are actively working on them. And part of that will likely be the city looking for firms or companies that can help us with that work, because we just don't have enough people to do it internally right now in our public works department. So again, thank you for flagging. That's fantastic feedback. Great to know that that's a concern of yours, and we're trying to do better. But I guess I'll check in with you in a while and see if we're meeting your standards yet. So thanks for the feedback.
All right, Alenza, I'm ready. So Caroline, if you want to escape out of the presentation and then just go right back into it. All right, so the thought with this process was to just immediately take some of the thoughts from everybody here and get them on the screen so everybody can see. And then Alenza and I, we're just gonna alternate and do a quick kind of a summary. So I can do a quick one on this slide. I think some of this, the first comments are responding to Columbus Avenue. And so I think that is concerns that the morning rush on Columbus is slower because of fewer lanes. Comment on recognizing the safety desires of the project, but still feeling that the system in the way it's designed is flawed. And I think this gets to this idea that people have been sharing with the city, that some of the results of the benefits on Columbus might be pushing off onto the side streets, and that's something that Kirsty said the city has recognized and is going to be taking more into consideration as part of this going into this next process. Some basics like the trees, fixing potholes, and traffic light flow. Some of the traffic light issues has to do with needing new equipment, and once you get new equipment, that allows for more, more thoughtful timing. Some of the equipment is really old on Blue Hill Avenue. Another light retiming, double parked cars on Blue Hill Avenue and getting the double parked cars off by enforcement or other means. Somebody didn't like the Columbus Avenue project, opposed to it on Blue Hill Avenue, concerns about already congested traffic and making it worse for people that are in cars, concerns of adding time to commute for people who are driving, and people concerned of what if I can't take transit and I am stuck driving, how is that going to impact me? Comments on increasing bus frequency. And one of the issues with buses that are stuck in traffic is that I'd be better if I had a visual for this, but in order to have the buses arrive at the correct time and the correct frequency, you have to have so many more buses on the street. And so because you need more buses on the street that are stuck in traffic, you just can't have the frequency that you want. So one of the benefits of having free-flowing buses is you get them to come more frequently, even without buying any more buses. So that's kind of a characteristic of having the buses stuck in traffic connected to the frequency. Let's see. Another concern about number of traffic lanes, and there is a general idea out that if you only have one lane instead of two, that the traffic is going to be twice as bad. That isn't necessarily the case, and we can talk about that more as in this process. Comment on synchronizing lights. Somebody who some very specifics about turns. Somebody who walks and bikes on Blue Hill Avenue, likes the wider sidewalks, thinking about businesses and the streetscape space. So a reminder, this project is not just a transportation project, but it is a urban design and urban space project. So all the way from one building face on one side to one building face on the other side is included as part of this project. I know there's been a lot of questions of, is it just going to be the street and not the sidewalks? and more bike parking, and people who would like to keep the small businesses so they can get a cup of coffee. So that's a quick summary of that one. Alenza, do you want to take next?
Thanks, Jeff. So in terms of what are your ideas and desires for Blue Hill Ave, we got quite a mix of comments. Some people commented that the speed definitely needs to be reduced in addition to synchronizing the lights so that flow is better. We also see some signs about better crosswalks, bus information, bus booths and benches. Please try not to make the sidewalks so wide. Some people are saying that they would want to keep it the same, but the crosswalks should be painted and signs replaced. Someone said they'd like to see separated bus lanes along with separated bike lanes and pedestrian walkways and with some greenery. Trees and plantings and benches are desperately needed. Also a plan for maintenance of that greenery, lighting at night. Someone commented that they'd like to see Blue Hill Ave be like JP Center with plenty of stores that are not chained up at night, so the street is always clean. This individual commented that they grew up on Blue Hill, and in the 50s, you didn't have to go downtown for anything. Everything was right nearby, even a movie theater. Another comment says, I want Blue Hill Avenue to grow and thrive as a commercial space, increase the number of businesses and see folks from the neighborhood employed there. I'd love to see the center running bus lanes, separated bike lanes, and lots of trees. Marked parking, improved traffic flow, more parking for businesses, planning for snow, particularly focus on pedestrian safety, enhanced bus service can make it easier and more timely for riders. Improved traffic enforcement, too many cars, double and triple parked cars along the roadway, ensuring that pedestrians can cross safely in Grove Hall with the median strip. It would be great to see if Blue Hill Ave could mirror VFW Parkway corridor that cuts through Brookline, Newton, and Hyde Park. Would also like to see more accessibility for pedestrians. I think that's what that means. There should be a way to strike a balance for pedestrian safety and beautification, and more benches, time to cross streets, more parking in Mattapan Square, and outside dining. So as you can all see, there's a lot of varying opinions, and as this reinforces what we said earlier, that there's not a one size that fits all. Some people want wider lanes, some people want more narrow ones, some people are more focused on safety, some people are more focused on traffic flow. So this is not going to be a one-shot deal to solve everything. This is going to be a process that's going to take years of development and redesign. But I think we can all agree, at least one thing, which is that Blue Hill Avenue needs to change. And for those who missed our historic overview that we provided at the last meeting, that video is up on the Blue Hill Avenue Transportation Action website. You can talk about how there hasn't really been any major changes to Blue Hill Ave since the streetcars were removed in the 1950s. So we are at a place now where we really do need to come together and make some decisions, and it's going to be a give and take, but one all shot is not going to work, and neither is a we do nothing deal isn't going to work either. Jeff, I'll pass the next one to you.
Great. Thanks. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right screen. Great. I tried to do a quick spelling correction, and then I realized I just wasn't able to do it fast enough, but hope I did everybody's comments justice. All right, so thoughts continuing. This comment is focusing on other modes, biking, walking, transit, making those easier, not necessarily only driving easier, repaving, potholes, a lot of comments on that. Now this is good. Parking, this hasn't come up yet. We know this is a big issue around any kind of a redesign. What happens to the parking? That's one of the, oftentimes the main reason why people aren't interested in doing any kind of redesign is because of fear of parking. Thinking about how to use empty lots on the side, and sort of not how frustrating it is when you're having trouble finding parking, but you see an empty lot on the side and you're like, how come I can't park there? So thinking about more public-private partnerships around parking, limiting traffic to 20 miles per hour. That is something that is now possible because of a change at the state level for municipalities to do that in a very urban place like Mattapan, Dorchester. That makes sense. A lot of attention needs to be paid to the abutters and shops, and that has been spoken and heard loud and clear. Clear streets, cleaner streets. Some questions about width, and is it wide enough for bike lanes? Can you have the bus lanes and the bike lanes? I'm not sure how all that's going to work. That's one of the roles of this consulting team, is to help answer these questions from the community side and walk through what are the different possibilities and what the trade-offs are. And as Alenza said, these are all going to be trade-offs. There's going to be no single product that's going to satisfy every single one of everybody's needs. Concerns about the 2 lanes, we talked about that. Is it possible to maintain the 2 lanes and have an express lane for buses? And I think people are sort of recognizing, yes, we want the buses to be faster, but how can we do that and minimize the expense to driving? Another, double parking. Ideas for the future of the city as seen by an intergenerational group of community members. Everyone's needs and wants can be addressed, consistent and so I think that's one thought. And then another is consistent and clearly marked biking and walking lanes. I think one of the things that this consulting team is really trying to do differently is to recognize that different feedback comes in different places for different people. And especially with Consult Lila, youth are oftentimes left out of the conversation, and yet they comprise a significant number of the people who are using Blue Hill Avenue. And so kind of changing how we think about the different generations, and they're the ones that are going to be living with this product for decades after. Protected bike lanes, more trees, traffic calming, comment on maintenance, comment on attractive and shade, safe crossings, somebody who bikes recognizing that biking on the street is not for everybody, so feeling like biking in protected bike lanes or on paths and greenways. Maintenance of sidewalks, ramps for drainage and puddles. And I think one of the images that Kwame showed earlier is that the new way of doing crosswalks at side streets is to not have those curb ramps and raise the street slightly so that the crosswalk can be level with the edge of the street. And we might want to show that image later, because that's a huge improvement to the walking conditions for everybody, including people with wheelchairs and people pushing strollers. And it also means that it's just a straight cross. There's no puddles to walk in. Another comment on safety, not wanting to look to American Legion Highway, somebody not feeling like bike lanes are necessary because not a lot of people use them, more crosswalks, fixing potholes. And final one on this slide, hoping that the community and City Hall will be in close communication through the entire process. If everybody isn't on the same page, this is going to be a disaster. I think this whole team recognizes that and is committed to having these conversations. And the hopes is an infrastructure change that will be a parallel parking option to minimize crashes. So we can go to the last half a slide.
Okay, last slide. We're going to go through this quickly because we know folks want to get to discussion. In terms of additional ideas and desires for Blue Hill Ave, we see more spaces for artists to paint on. For example, an empty wall in Blue Hill to put community art, having more trees along the sidewalks, for city and state to work together to find a way to make it safer and more enjoyable to navigate. To see a street have more trees and greenery. I do not want cars to be forgotten in this work. Small businesses need support. They will need customers who can come from afar, like in a car. I hope Blue Hill Avenue below Grove Hall will be seen as a space that is narrow and needs to be supported, as its specifics are different than Upper Blue Hill Ave. Bike lane similar Columbus Ave, Eggleston Square. repave Blue Hill, create safer lanes across for emergency vehicles to pass through traffic, restructuring timing for traffic signals seems to be the biggest issue around slowness of traffic, possibility of roundabouts at Harvard and Blue Hill and other intersections. These are all very interesting ideas that are worth doing some prototyping and seeing how they will work. So thank you all for participating in the poll and submitting your questions. You can also continue the conversation of submitting questions as you have. Here, we have a Google form where we're doing an intake. We're also working on getting that translated into different languages. So if you want to continue to add your questions, you can enter it into the Google Doc that I just shared. I'll share it again a little bit later. Also, feel free to pass that on to your neighbors. I'm seeing in the comments that folks are saying that there wasn't a lot of turnout here. This is only as good as, again, and we'll just keep repeating, this is only as good as the active participation and support of everyone. You know, we're still a small team and we could always use your help in getting the word out. So thanks.
All right, we're going to move to the last piece we have. We're going to move past this and go to the what's next. And before we do that, we want to end pretty close to on time. So do we want to take a few more verbal comments and then move to what's next?
What if we do what's next first in case people have a hard stop at home, and then we can keep going a little over with comments? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kirsty, did you want to
Great.
round us up?
Yes, I'd love to wrap up. So thank you to my team for working on this presentation. And thank you everybody for your participation and your comments. Know that we save everything we get by the polls, by the chat comments, and make sure that we're logging those so we can understand the type of feedback we're getting, and importantly too, like where it's coming from. So that's why we ask in the beginning, you know, how do you travel? Where are you? So we can see where we're missing folks that we're not reaching, and we can do more to make sure we hear from those people. So all of this has been super helpful today, and I really appreciate you all showing up and spending your time with us. So moving forward with this project, what does that look like? We are going to continue hosting monthly community meetings like this. The next one will be in January. We're actually skipping December. We'll have some more information on the details of those on the next slide. We will also continue meeting with those community leaders that folks mentioned at the beginning of the meeting in order to get guidance on the type of information we need to be collecting, who should we be talking to, where is best to reach those folks. For example, one really great suggestion we got from that group was to post information in the pamphlets and the newsletters that grocery stores give out along the corridor. So we're looking for innovative ways to make sure that we can get in touch with and get feedback from as many people as possible. While that's happening, we will also be sort of gathering some data about how Blue Hill Avenue works today. So moving into the winter and spring of next year, you might see some folks out there that are taking measurements, that kind of thing, just to make sure that we have the most up-to-date idea of what the street looks like today, what the measurements are, all of those sorts of questions. And hopefully you'll be seeing us out in the community a lot too. I myself will be this Saturday attending an event that's being put on by the Mayor's Office of Housing. It's part of their Building Homes, Building Wealth initiative. So they will be at the Berkshire Blue Hill Club, or the Boys and Girls Club, at 15 Talbot Avenue on Saturday, November 19th. So that's this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I'm going to share a link so that you all can get more information on that if you'd like. I'm very bad at typing and texting though, so I'll do that in a moment. Typing and talking, so I'll do that in a moment. But that's where we are. And then according to the federal grant we received, we would have to complete any form of construction no later than September 15th of 2029, as you can see here. So next slide.
Somehow that slide isn't there.
No worries. Okay, so that's interesting, but I can explain it verbally. So we have a number of meetings coming up. We worked with our community partners to identify that the fourth Tuesdays are one of the best times to be meeting with folks for these meetings. So we'll have meetings every fourth Tuesday between January and July of next year. You, after this meeting tonight, you will be able to, starting tomorrow, register for those meetings by visiting bit.ly/BHA-TAP. I will also put that into the chat, and that will actually sign you up for all 6 of them. Come to what you can. We would love to see you at every one, but we're really looking forward to engaging with folks, providing regular updates through those meetings, but also talking to folks otherwise. And then I will also put contact information, email, phone number in the chat so folks can get in touch with me and the Blue Hill Avenue team if you have any other feedback or questions. I really monitor those email inboxes and those voicemail inboxes and try to get back to folks as quickly as possible. And I'll pass it back to the team.
Caroline, if you just want to undo the presentation and redo it, that missing slide I re-put in, I don't know where it went.
Yes, here it is. So here's all the information. I will also put it in the chat, but you can contact us at bluehillab@boston.gov. This phone number goes directly to the phone that's on my desk. And then linked here too, when we post the slides, you can see that is the form that Alensa mentioned that she and her team put together, where she can take in questions and concerns that you all have. So Alensa, if you could maybe post that in the chat again so people have it. That's a great way to let us know what your thoughts are too.
So I think for those who have a hard stop at 8 o'clock, it is 8 o'clock. And so we wanted to make sure we rounded out the information that you needed at the end, but we also want to honor the folks' time who have stayed to share their comments or questions at the end. So yeah, Jeff, Alensa, pick it back up, I guess. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. So this is what we've been hearing so far, but we've also heard more tonight, and we anticipate that we'll hear more. Again, if there are questions or concerns that you have, please feel free to add your questions to the intake form. We're also going to be doing some focus groups, as we mentioned before. And if we have the capacity because of the weather, it's a little bit harder to do. We'd like to do a few more community walks and spend some time connecting with you all. I just want to say that I know that there's a lot of emotion, and I'm seeing that in the chat. And we've got to be able to maintain healthy conversation about this project. You know, I'm involved in this work because I live here. Okay, I became a planner because I grew up in Mattapan. I care about this issue because I have lived and worked in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. I have been deeply involved in the Fairmount corridor, and I, for one, would like to see us have access to opportunity, both in the social means, but also in the built environment. And it is really hard for folks to have these conversations when there are dissenting voices that are overpowering the conversation. I know for myself, out of the many people that I have been engaging and talking to, a number of folks have told me that they want to speak up in these meetings, but it's hard to because they feel like they're going to be dominated by dissenting voices. So let's keep that in mind, because this isn't the way that we want to move forward. This isn't like some big, super scheme, or there's some nefarious plot that's going on. Because if it were, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't be involved in this work. And I know my team members wouldn't be involved in this either. So let's keep that in mind and think about ways that we want to make sure that we're opening up this conversation. Because as we can agree, I think that at least the least thing that we can agree on is that Blue Hill Avenue needs major improvements, but we can't get anything done if we're going to be fighting each other, y'all. So like, let's take a step back and be mindful about that. Okay. There's more to come. The loudest voices get heard, but that doesn't mean they're often listened to. There's a big difference between being heard and being listened to, Christina. So I appreciate the comments that you have. I'm looking forward to reaching out to you as we will reach out to others and that we can organize some local walks and hear more and more detail what your concerns are and experience that in real time. So I hope that folks will be able to pay attention to that. And I understand that there's a lot of fear that is also involved in this, and that's real. I get it. But we also need to start turning that fear into action and to positive direction. So we are over time now. Thank you all for participating. If folks would like to stay on and answer a few more questions, we can stay on for a few more minutes, but we also know that we have a plan to conclude at 8 o'clock and we want to honor that. Kenya.
Thanks, Allie. So I don't have a question, but I just want to share my comment. And because I just kind of want to piggyback because there is a little back and forth going on in the chat. And so what I've been asking folks to just be kind because everyone here has an opinion that is validated. This is the platform for anybody who shares whatever form of transportation in this city to share their thoughts, comments, concerns about a better riding situation for Blue Hill Avenue. And that will be respected in this space. My other comment is this. I'm a lifelong Mattapan resident, born and bred in Boston. I always say this because people sometimes think that just because many of us work for the city or we're partnering with departments and such that somehow we do not live in this space. We do. And many of us have lived here all our lives. So I just want to make sure that people really understand this, that when we're doing this work, we're coming from a space of experience and many years of it. I'm a working adult who lives in Mattapan, who does not take the public transportation because it's not reliable for me. I'm a driver. However, I completely and utterly understand why the safety mechanisms are necessary for those who commute, for those who bike, and those who walk up and down Blue Hill Avenue. It's necessary. Blue Hill Avenue has not sought any real improvements in decades. And I think many of you on this call, if you're very honest with yourselves, will understand that, and you know this. Now, you may not necessarily agree with the format, but I think we all can understand that some change is necessary for Blue Hill Avenue. Actually, a lot of change is necessary for Blue Hill Avenue. And so these changes include not just center bus lanes, but it's all the things, street trees and everything that they've already mentioned in this presentation. And so I'm just asking folks to just have an open mind, think beyond your vehicle, because that's what I'm trying to do, think beyond my vehicle. And I'm thinking about others who too want to get to where they're going in a timely fashion. And so I just wanted to say that, thank you for the time to speak.
Thanks, Kenya. Kirsty, do you want to take it away from here?
Sure. So thank you again, everybody, for coming. I think that to respect everybody's time and so nobody misses out, we actually will go ahead and end the meeting. We got a lot of great comments through the forms that you all filled out. So thank you again for that. And I'd like to leave with Alensa and Kenya's voices because that was very powerful. And I appreciate both of you for contributing that. And hopefully we will see you all, if not for the January meeting, then before then.
Thank you all.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And please share the website with folks you know.
Thank you.
Team, don't forget to save the chat if you haven't already.